Please check out part 1 and 2 of this series for today, for June 19th, 2014, on Iraq, on ISIS, and what's going on in the region, what these leaders are saying, little in-betweens, and in the next video, probably more conspiracy stuff. Because this, a lot of this stuff is true. I mean, you had in the last video, you had Maliki Assad and Iran talking about a conspiracy to destabilize the region. None of them really mentioned the Greater Israel project, or how these people might be actually doing the work for them, right? So they're starting to seize Iraq's oil refineries, so now the special forces are going over there. It's similar to what? To Libya, right? Another operation of these same types of people, right? That's basically the terrorists there in Libya took over an oil tanker. I think they actually, they took it over and they were going to send it out, and then there was I think the government sent Scud missiles after it and tried to blow it up. But basically, they sent over U.S. Navy SEALs to take over oil tanker for return to Libya. In other words, this ISIS, or these people, they're not going to get what they want. They're not going to get control over the economy, and they're not going to get control as far as politics, religion, where they can impose Sharia law and cut people's heads off and all that stuff. You might see it in Britain, in the UK, in Europe, maybe even parts of the United States. They've actually created laws there in the UK where they've allowed Sharia law in some parts and districts. So, and Europe knows more than the US. But so they don't care about that. They don't care. The governments there in the West, they don't really care too much that, there's actually a significant amount of these terrorists that were in Syria or Libya that were coming, now Iraq and Afghanistan were coming from the U.S. They were coming from these same places, harboring these terrorists, so they don't really say anything about them. Remember Eric Haroun, the CIA agent, basically, who was over in Syria working with the terrorists? He died supposedly recently. But yeah, ISIS Incorporated, jihadists attract investors and fighters with annual reports. You see this a lot, right? Posting on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. Who would know? Who would have thought that that these groups like Al Qaeda could be so tech savvy, right? But we saw that with Syria, especially with Live Leak and all the butchering that was going on by these people, and it was completely ignored by these humanitarians. They said here that this Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, ISIS or ISIL, has been behaving like a big corporation, issuing press releases to create an image of a well-structured, disciplined, and effective organization to attract investors and new members. So you see a lot of that dropping leaflets in Saudi Arabia. This guy, I saw the news, they're the leader's a shadowy person. That right there, along with we can call ISIS, is a big indicator who these people are working for, whether they know it or not. The other thing too is this, as far lightning advances against government forces. There's been a lot of death in Iraq. I've covered that in the last year or so. It was kind of burning me out. It's part of burning me out, covering all those articles of all the people that were being killed and wounded. Hundreds. Not so much the Iraqi forces. So maybe this is the big deal. Like Syria, the people get killed. I didn't really give a crap, In Syria they did, because they called it a humanitarian disaster and blamed it on Assad. And then Iraq, they don't really care about all the people that have died. Now they care about the regime that they have in place, and all them not defending these other people there for hire. Is ISIL really Sunni? Not at all. The Western media describes them as ultra-extremist terrorists destabilizing Iraq and Syria as Sunni militants. Okay, it says the corporate media cast the fighting in Iraq as a Sunni versus Shia conflict. We're talking about one of the sectarian strife, very obvious to most of you, I'm sure. The Sunni side, according to these reports, is led by ISIL, a group that was expelled from Al Qaeda for being too extreme. Many experts say no, that ISIL is not real Sunni. some question whether they have a right to call themselves an Islamic group at all. And lastly, a lot of so-called jihad is rooted in Islam. It says, especially if you look at who's funding it, who's supporting it, who's behind it. This Dr. Andrew Morrow, Truth Jihad Radio Islamic scholar, questioned this group's credentials. Western powers have a long history of using jihadists and Islamists to further their imperial ambitions. We saw that in Afghanistan. In terms of the foot soldiers, they may think they are fighting for Islam, but if you look closer, you find they're fighting the cause of the enemy. So, again, that's what I was saying. Will ISIS plan a 9/11 style terror attack against the U.S.? So it's U.S. interest, right? Probably not, because most of these people are actually working with the FBI so that their little terror plots can be foiled, so that the U.S. government and all that can legitimize how they're cramping down on just average citizens who aren't Muslim extremists. It's because that's what it's all about. So they don't really. I don't think much is going to happen unless it's authorized, much like the Israel-Saudi attack against the United States, known as 9/11. They call it an inside job, which deviates from who was really behind it. So if they do carry something out, it's most likely done by the U.S. inside job, right? So yes, there are, but there's a lot of confusion. Wolfowitz, all of them, basically working for Israel and different types of industries, corporations. ISIS poses no existential threat to America. Patrick Buchanan, June 17th, State of the Union. Check that out from the American Conservative. Type that in. Excellent article that he wrote about the situation. I don't fully agree with his analysis because he doesn't, I don't think he mentions the Israeli expansion plan, Greater Israel. He kind of goes along with what some libertarians or conservatives are saying. Oh, just let them kill each other, right? Which actually plays into what they want, which is to create sectarian violence. So as far as the question, does this group pose a threat to America? And Pat Buchanan says no. Well, of course you'd have to define what is America, right? What is America? Is it a corporation? Is it a democracy? Do people have a say? We know that there's heavy Jewish or Zionist interest in America, especially in the banking system, but in the political system, overrepresented. So they have a lot of sway, a lot of pull. But so when I see America, that's what I see. I see different industries, industrial parties, right? Like I said, Obama or Bush, they represent different types of industries, and they help put them there through lobbying. Pretty obvious, but so is this group a threat to the American people? Well, no, but of course they're going to tell you that crap, that they're going to bomb you and stuff. And if Americans don't go along with it, much like Pearl Harbor or Gulf of Tonkin or other types of things, if they're not war hungry, as the people who are going to really profit from these wars, they'll just go ahead and carry out what most people will refer to as a false flag attack. And it really has a very effective way of convincing the public to do something that they wouldn't normally do. It also down the future says, well, see what happens, that's what happens when you're a pacifist, right? And you want to help corporations profit. So, no, not really a physical threat to the average American, but the real threat is towards the average American whose life has been getting better lately in the last few months. And these people who are saying that there's a threat smell blood in the water, and they want to get as much as they can and squeeze as much as they can from America, while at the same time pursuing geopolitical goals as far as Greater Israel in that area, in that region of the Middle East. A battle for Iraq's oil refinery can be seen from space. The smoke has risen above a vast site, as Shiites rush to join peace brigades to defend holy sites from ISIS. These same types of people, along with Al-Qaeda, were destroying all types of historical religious sites in Syria, and they do the same everywhere else. Somebody's lying here, because we covered that al-Maliki was actually not doing what the West wanted, And you keep hearing this stuff, oh yeah, Iraq's asking, they're begging for airstrikes. They got 900,000 troops, I heard. They got a lot of resources to take care of these people, but the spokesman for Iraq Prime Minister says the country's leaders felt abandoned by the U.S., Europe, and the UN. So, while at the same time he was saying that, you know, we're going to handle this crap on our own. This is, I guess, maybe good for the American dollar, being that it's a petrodollar backed by sale of oil and dollars. That's, you know, of course, they have a monopoly in that. So Saddam found out very easily what happens when you challenge that, and like Gaddafi. Not to have anything personal against them, or dealing with dictators or anything, but they just don't like you getting in, putting their hands into your pocket. Oil hits new 9-month peak on Iraq crisis. So if you are going to have a greater Israel in the region, you want to have some kind of revenue inflow, and that is exporting 40% of its new natural gas bonanza. And it says here the prospect of this coming together is quite slim. If anything, their natural gas fields are going to end up sparking competition and regional destabilization rather than the opposite. So there's two ways for Israel to export its natural gas. The first is a pipeline to Turkey and hooking up with the planned TAP pipelines. They say it's laughable. That won't happen. It says in order to send Israeli gas to the rest of Europe, but I think that's the big thing. They don't much like, it seems like Putin or Russia and Gazprom competing with them, again, getting in their pockets. Plus, I think they've been a little anti-Zionist out there in Russia. From the National Review, will counter Putin with natural gas exports. Obama should ignore the Green Lobby and expedite exports to Europe. The U.S. is, like I've mentioned many times before, been exporting, or basically creating and exporting massive amounts of oil and natural gas. So, especially since Obama's been in. But Babylon. So this region, right? Conspiracy realm here. This region of Iraq. We all know that that the area, ancient city in that, an area of Mesopotamia, is Babylon, right? Of course, scientists discredit this, much like they discredit the protocols for the Elder of Zion as being some kind of fraud or fake. Oh, it's not really like that. But these were the same people that the chosen people, right? The chosen land, the greater Israel. They've been in all types of history, right? These people that say that they're part of the Bible. But they will, I think, try to fulfill some type of Armageddon type situation here to let it play out. Sumer, so land of the civilized kings, or native land, ancient civilization, and basically Iraq. So here's where it gets crazy, and I'll just be honest. Like I said before, you can't count out certain things, right? You know, beyond Jewish supremacism and stuff like that. Does it go beyond that? These people, who some say, you know, Sumer was about these Anunnaki or reptilian type stuff. I mean, I consider it as a possibility. They weren't what? Semitic, right? They were white. You hear the same thing in Egypt. Look at they were civilizing, draining marshes, agriculture, developing trade, establishing industries. So a lot of types of things that were going on. I think there was kind of like that in South America, but Egypt where it kind of comes out of left field. So Sumerians were the first people to start building actual cities and stuff, city grids, modern cities. It's like Babylon, but so in other words, they got all these goodies in exchange for being beholden to these people, these beings. The name Isis means throne, going back to Egypt, right? A throne. So who's going to be sitting on that throne that these people are carving out and creating with all this violence? Would it be Jews? Would it be these ancient Sumerians, or these beings? Isis is also known as the protector of the dead. She restored Osiris's body after gathering the body parts and strewn about the earth. So putting things back together, reinstating the throne. There's something demonic about this group, because not even Al-Qaeda wants to have anything to do with them. I've covered before about targeting, opening up gateways and portals and type stuff into Syria along with Iraq. So something's going on here whether it's CERN or death rays. One group actually refers to ISIS as a way of activating portals.